So huge welcome to everyone joining us from wherever you are in the world for this very special Laudato Si Week webinar on aligning your finances with your faith values. My name's Lorna Gold and I'm the Director of Movement Building with Faith Invest. And Faith Invest is one of the key partners that's been working with the Laudato Si movement and with the Laudato Si Action platform around the area of ecological economics. As we all know, this week is Laudato Si Week, so happy Laudato Si Week to you all. And one of the areas that we really want to be exploring this week, I know we've all been watching the film, The Letter, and one of the themes that comes out of the film, if you've had a chance to see it in your community this week, is the importance and the need to transform our economy in order to take care of our common home. And this webinar that we're having today, we want to delve into how we as Catholics, as people of goodwill, can use the Laudato Si platform and the resources that are available on the platform and learn from each other in how we use our finances, align our finances for this important task of caring for our common home. 1 year ago to the day, we launched this aspect of the Laudato Si Action platform, the ecological economics aspect. And we launched a very special resource hub called the Laudato Si Laudato Si Investment Resource Hub, which helps to guide people around the resources that are available around care for our common home and our investments. And you're very welcome to take a look at that resource hub and all the wonderful resources that are available on it. Today in our webinar, we have 3 wonderful speakers and the agenda for our meeting today, we're going to be talking with Elizabeth Garlow, talking with Kayoko Lyons, and with Joseph Dahulian from the Laudato Si movement. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, or maybe we should say the tofu of our discussion, let's hear from John Mundell, who's the director of the Laudato Si platform, and is going to share an opening prayer with us. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Lorna, and good day, everyone, and greetings on this special Laudato Si week that we're celebrating everywhere. I want to share with you just a short reflection and prayer at the beginning. And I would say this reflection is somewhat emotional, because this is all emotional for me, and I've often found that for me, tying into the emotions helps me to understand my need for the correct response and change that needs to happen. So this reflection, we'll start off this reflection with this short really poem. Earth, not yet dead, but about to die. Peace be on you. Here is a song I scribble in my heart for your funeral and mine. When in the shadow of death's poisonous flower, tomorrow your body will be cold and numb. There will be none left, not I either, to pay you homage, or let a teardrop on your ashen face. So I scribble this for you, Earth, about to die. You gave birth to children innumerable, unsociable. You watched them eat each other. You wept in secret. Then they started eating you, and you, all enduring one, you made no move to protest or prevent. They who had drunk at your breasts and grown plump felt a new thirst, their last thirst, to suck the blood of your sacred heart. They stripped you of the green in which the sun had clothed his beloved bride. Into your flesh they sank their nails, and drank the blood that gushed from your wounds. Raped, ostracized, with shaven head, bent beneath the burden of your children's sin and shame, you wander alone in space. Earth not yet dead, but about to die. Peace be on you. This is a 1985 reflection from Kurup. So let's all pray together the following prayer. Most loving creator of the universe, we come before you with humble hearts, seeking your guidance and wisdom. We ask that you help us to be good stewards of this planet, to care for it as you would, and to protect it for future generations. Help us to see the beauty in all things and to appreciate the wonder of your creation. May we be inspired to take action, to make a difference in the world, and to leave this planet better than we found it. We also ask that you guide us in using our financial resources for the betterment of the planet. May we be wise in our investments and generous in our giving, so that we may help to create a more sustainable and just world. Amen.
Thank you, John, and thank you for bringing to us the urgency of the change that we need, and also in that beautiful prayer, the means and the action that we need to take to start to redirect and to, so that we're not the earth the earth won't die, that we can start to rebuild with care for our common home. In order to get us a sense of what is already happening and how we can start to think about how we use our investments as Catholics, as Catholic individuals, as Catholic institutions, let's watch a short video which was prepared for the meeting we had last year, the first meeting in Laudato Si' Week on ecological economics.
The Living Laudato Si' Resource Hub is a new online platform set up to support faith organisations as they seek to deliver on their ecological economics goals in the spirit of Laudato Si'. It provides resources, guides and reflections to help faith organisations as they consider how best to use their financial assets for the common good. And it has some great case studies setting out why faith communities are taking a new look at how they use their investments.
It was important that, in a sense, the whole of our investment work should be intentionally investing for good. And of course, that nowadays means investing particularly for the ecological concerns of climate and biodiversity.
With climate change being so overwhelming, people feel paralyzed, and what can I do about it? And this is what we've chosen to do about it in conjunction with our partners. And we hope that it will be an inspiration to others for them to do what they can.
I think the existence of Laudato Si' helps us have those kinds of conversations with our intermediaries. The Catholic investing world is being asked, cajoled, instructed to consider the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor.
We have been encouraging ourselves that it is important to go into renewable energy, and with the belief that if we shrink the need and demand for the fossil fuels gradually, then we also will reduce its manufacturing and its production.
And we've also started engaging with our publicly traded managers of asking the questions, how does this fit into the ESG? And becoming more explicit about Catholic social teaching within the vetting of the portfolio.
So it's our job, our responsibility to look out for Mother Earth, because as we look out for Mother Earth, we protect ourselves and our future generations.
One of the things that Laudato Si has done is help to sharpen the focus and increase the understanding of the impacts that our investments and actions are having. And that, you know, with the multi-crises that are happening in the world today, it is so evident that unless we ramp up our responses, we're not going to make it.
In this Laudato Si journey, I would want to see a greater networking of religious women where we share what we do.
Probably again, due to the publication of Laudato Si, there are more sources of support for faith-based investors now than there were.
We haven't got time to be embarrassed by being behind or ahead or whatever. We just got to do the work and do it as fast as we can, reasonably can.
And realize this is mission as well as starting a hospital or education or feeding the poor. This is also ministry and mission.
The Hub is hosted on the Faith Invest website. Faith Invest is a not-for-profit organisation that supports faith groups to invest in line with their values. Join us as together we grow this community of organisations working joyfully for people and planet.
I think that's a great video to start us off and to get a real sense of the community that's emerging around this area of how we align our finances, how we build an ecological economics rooted in Laudato Si. And our first speaker to unpack some of the new resources that are available on the Laudato Si platform and on the Faith Invest website is someone who's probably known to a lot of you, Elizabeth Garlow, who is she wears several hats. One of her hats she wears is the senior advisor at Faith Invest on Catholic investing. She's also the co-founder of the Francesco Collaborative, which is based in the US, which was inspired by the economy of Francesco. Elizabeth has dedicated her entire professional career to economic transformation through policy and impact investing. Elizabeth, you're very welcome to join us and to unpack some of these resources that are available.
Thank you so much, Lorna. It is such a joy to be with all of you from around the world, and I'll echo the happy Laudato Si week wishes. So I think many of us have been hearing and reflecting on how Laudato Si offers this really powerful invitation to us to steward our financial and other types of resources in ways that offer a meaningful response to the cries of the earth and of the poor that become centered in our reflections on Laudato Si. We are invited to sit with and reflect on how our world is facing this ecological crisis. And Pope Francis calls us to acknowledge that the realm of the economy and economic growth cannot be disconnected from this ecological crisis. He often says that the environment is what's paid the price for economic growth. And so this is part of the reason that these goals of the Laudato Si Action platform related to our finances, our choice of banking and insurance providers, are situated under this ecological economics goal. Because as stewards of these resources, we shape our economic ecology and the culture that it upholds. So it's not just about generous stewardship of our resources. I think what Laudato Si calls us into is to recognize the power and the responsibility that we have to use our resources to engage in the structural, the structural transformations that we need in our global economy. At the center of this economy is this network of financial flows, which has been designed without any modern ethical framework. And I would say, in fact, that its inherent features are the vulnerability of nature and of humanity, the cry of the earth and of the poor. But when we engage in this invitation of Laudato Si to ecological conversion, we start to see more clearly that there's a different sort of horizon for us for our approach to finance and investing. It's not simply one of profit maximization, even if those profits have a good end to them, but it's a new moral horizon, one that upholds the common good. So while the paths to that horizon may look different, depending on our context, whether we're in a diocese or in a religious congregation or a university or school, we can start to chart those courses to that horizon. And that's what these guides are really about. They are meant to give you some sort of compass as you set about on your journey to embodying the call of Laudato Si. The 4 guides available to you speak to the 4 sub-goals of ecological economics: divesting of activities that are harmful to people and planet, positive investing in activities that support the well-being of our common home and humanity, and participating in ethical and sustainable banking and insurance options. And these guides are customized by 4 sectors: dioceses, religious congregations, schools, and universities. We recognize that there are different contexts within which each of you are operating, and it was important to bring some level of customization to these roadmaps, if you will. Next slide, please. These guides follow the Catholic social teaching framework of see, judge, or discern, and act. And as part of seeing the signs of our time, we offer reflection questions at the outset of these guides to help you reflect on whether your current practices or partners, such as financial advisors or managers, are aligned with the principles of Catholic social teaching and Laudato Si. And in some cases, these guides offer you suggested questionnaires to bring to those financial managers or to those banking and insurance providers to help you focus your conversations with them, to help you better understand their commitment to your values, or to make more explicit what your criteria are. So for example, you might be asking your banking provider about their transparency and disclosure requirements, about their investment activities in fossil fuel exploration, refining, or distribution, or in mining, or in the privatization of water. And in these guides and our invitations to action, we offer concrete guideposts for the journey. So for example, as you see here in this slide, in our guide to sustainable investing, we try to illuminate some of the practical steps that you might be able to take to build internal consensus, to create decision-making and governance committees, and to define your objectives, figuring out your impact objectives, how you want to clarify them, and also your financial return objectives and your non-financial return objectives through impact, right, as an expression of your mission, your charism of Laudato Si principles. Making decisions to make certain types of investments and then monitoring those in ways that you remain in relationship with those investments, so you can continue to center the values of Laudato Si moving forward. Pope Francis writes in Laudato Si that, quote, "We need a conversion that includes everyone, since our environmental challenge that we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect us all." I think very often in our finance and investment decision-making, we confine some of those activities to maybe a narrow group of us, to a committee. But something that these guides elevate is the importance of broad participation in all of these strategies. Catholic social teaching reminds us that decision-making power should reside with those who are most affected by the problems we seek to address. So when we're figuring out our strategies, we're invited to take a look at who's at our decision-making tables, who has a role, who doesn't have a role. Do those with a role feel heard and valued for their contributions? We have to remember that what's important in this work is not just our financial and technical expertise, but our social education, our lived wisdom, our encounters with the poor and with the suffering. And when we make decisions, especially decisions about investing in communities and programs that are intended to improve the lives of the poor and vulnerable, those who are most affected should always have a central voice in that process in some way. Next slide, please. We may find that depending on our unique context and our capacities, we can use a number of different types of approaches, often in combination with each other, to embody Laudato Si in our finance and investing activities. And that's what this framework is meant to help illustrate. We may take what we call here resist approaches, such as exclusionary screening and divestment strategies. What do we not want to be invested in? We may engage in active dialogue and engagement, or what we often call shareholder advocacy practices, as a way of exercising responsible ownership with our assets. We may embrace what we call build approaches, so making direct investments for positive impact in communities. And in essence, this map shows that the what and the how of our approach to this work really matters. So you see here on the bottom, from left to right, we see a journey that moves from divestment to positive investments. So starting with those critical divestment activities that the Laudato Si Action Platform calls us into, and we'll reflect more on today, with a growing emphasis on moving toward positive investments as well, that involve designing and structuring our investments flexibly to create the impact that we most desire and to fairly distribute financial risk and returns. And on our y-axis, kind of moving up and down, we see that who we are in relationship with really matters in this work. Who is shaping our priorities when it comes to divestment and investment strategies? We begin with our values and we journey toward greater accountability to the peripheries. And this requires that we do what Pope Francis continuously calls us into, which is to encounter the refugee, to encounter the homeless, those who are suffering, to dialogue with the popular movements and allow those encounters to shape and change us. Some of our speakers today will share more concretely what this journey can look like in practice on both the divestment and the positive investing side. Next slide, please. So to help bring us to a close, I just want to note that as we take up this call, we will definitely encounter challenges along the way. There is often limited information available to us. So for example, many sustainable financial institutions are often smaller, often privately held, so there may be limited publicly available data on their performance. Or some regions may have limited options for sustainable banking and insurance providers. You may experience some resistance to change within your own organizations as you try to bring this conversation to the forefront. There may also be concerns around our own knowledge and capacity to do some of this work. So we try to anticipate and name some of these challenges in these guides, along with some useful resources to help you navigate through them. The important thing is that by engaging, we're creating demand for more and better options, and hopefully together we can design the solutions that we need. What's vital is that we continue to network and share with each other. Where are we taking bold action? Where are we getting stuck? How can we help each other? How can we as a big Laudato Si family also be in deeper collaboration with each other? Can we lower the barriers to co-investing with one another? We practice transparency and share information and insight into what each of us is doing on this journey. In our divestment guides, for example, we link to information on the Laudato Si movement site about Catholic organizations who are engaged in the divestment movement. And this is a meaningful step toward bringing visibility to this work. So we invite you to begin downloading these resources and putting them to use. We'll be sharing links in the chat where you can find them through the Laudato Si Investing Resource Hub. And right now they've been uploaded in English, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. And soon they will be available also in French, German, Kiswahili, Polish, and Tagalog. And so just as a final word, I heard a reflection recently that art is something that we offer generously. It might not work, but that we have to try. So each of you are gathered here as artisans of a different kind of future, hopefully one that is infused with the spirit and vision of Laudato Si. So as you get underway and deepen your commitment to an ecological economy, we hope that these guides help you take some of those steps that maybe don't always work the first time around, but we have to try. Because if not us, who? And if not now, when? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you for bringing the resources to life. And I really do encourage people to download them. They're downloadable from the various different websites that we put them in the chat, and I'm sure we'll be following up with them afterwards. As you said, Elizabeth, one of the really important things in embarking on this journey of aligning our faith and finances is really starting to feel that we're not alone. There are many, many other people who've taken steps in this direction. And one of those is with us here today, and that's Kyoko Lyons, who's the Director of Investments for the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, where she leads the impact investing practice and oversees the public portfolio. We have featured the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, or the Cabrini Sisters, on the website because there is just such fantastic work going on within their investment portfolio to really align to Catholic values. So to share with us some of that that knowledge and wisdom, we'd like to hear from Kyoko. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Lorna, and Elizabeth as well for that inspirational speech. And thank you all for joining us today. Today, I'm going to focus my remarks on just highlighting a couple of examples from our impact investment portfolio or our private market portfolio that are contributing to this new ecological economy. And so if you remember the visual that Elizabeth showed, we're going to be talking about the investments that are on the far right side, on that build side. And hopefully these just bring to life the conversations that we're having, and they can show you tactically how you really can use your investments to respond to the cry of the earth. In our practice, we've found that promoting dignified work and access to credit to be the most accessible and direct ways that an impact investment can have impact in the world as opposed to grants or donations. So to facilitate this work, we generally work through partner organizations that have staff in the communities where we're trying to support, because we think they have a better understanding of the local context than we might, sitting where I am in Chicago. And one of these partners that we want to highlight is Beneficial Returns. We invest in their fund, and then they use this money to provide loans or access to credit to social enterprises working in Latin America and Southeast Asia that are directly working towards contributing to reducing poverty and protecting our shared home. For example, one of the investments they made is to a company in the Philippines. This company invented a leather alternative, and it's made from pineapple leaves. And usually these pineapple leaves are just discarded as agricultural waste. But now they've used this loan to purchase equipment to expand their production of this sustainable leather. And not only are they creating an alternative to leather products, but they're also growing the income for the pineapple farmers that they work with. Another company that they financed is in Ecuador and committed to job preservation and protecting the rainforest. This company harvests balsa wood from small landowners, and they operate a factory that creates balsa laminates for wind turbines. This not only helps expand renewable energy, but it also replaces slash and burn practices and makes sure that the landowners are fairly compensated for their balsa. Another organization we work with is called Nest, and they provide flexible and patient loans along with training and support to social enterprises that create dignified jobs for people in need and also are contributing to environmental conservation in the Andes and the Amazon in Latin America. One of the companies they provided a loan to operates in a very, very rural village in the Andean highlands of Peru, where, as many of you may be familiar with, there are very few formalized jobs or reliable, stable sources of income for subsistence farmers. This company collects and processes moss using sustainable practices and then sells it to international orchid growers. This provides a stable employment for the farmers, and they're committed to paying these farmers above market prices and working with them to formalize these sales through long-term contracts. On average, the companies that Nest works with pay 20 to 25% above the local minimum wages, and Nest's goal is to increase that to 150% of local wages. They also really work with the companies to try to formalize employment so that low-income households are able to access benefits and rely on a stable source of income. And this is directly one of the ways that Laudato Si has called us to try to visualize this new ecological economics. I'll also highlight an example in our traditional fixed income or our bond portfolio, where we just replaced a portion of the publicly traded bonds with a debt investment in a fund called Ecobusiness. This fund provides technical assistance and loans to banks in Latin America to grow their green finance programs. They work with the banks and they teach them best practices for sustainable lending, and they work to finance projects like installation of water-saving drip irrigation, water filtration systems that improve soil quality, or biogas digesters that produce compost and fertilizer. This was one of the first investments we made, and we chose it because it was a large fund with a long track record. And they had other investors, the DFIs, or development financial institutions, that were trying to catalyze investors like us. And so they were acting as a first loss provider, meaning that this investment for us was lower risk. And so it was a really nice way for us when we were just getting started building our portfolio to make a lower risk or a safer investment. And I just want to highlight that all of these investments that I've just talked about, they're all loans or they're debt, so they need to be repaid. And we started with debt instead of equity because debt often has liquidity, which just means that you can get your money back in a shorter time frame. Because many of these investments that are contributing to a new ecological economy, sometimes you have to lock your money up for 10 or more years. And so for us personally, we liked this idea of starting with debt investments that are lower risk because it was a good first step towards building our impact investment portfolio. But I do want to highlight that there are, especially today, there are many, many different opportunities to invest in what's called venture capital or private equity. And this is really to help support the new technologies, the new small businesses that are really trying to create new and innovative solutions to fight climate change. They have a slightly higher risk profile than some of the debt investments that I've mentioned. So to date, we took the approach of investing in what's called a fund of funds strategy, one of which is called Climate Solutions Fund, which was created by the Adrian Dominican sisters here in the United States and managed by Morgan Stanley. That said, we're in the beginning of looking to explore investments in other venture capital and private equity funds that have ecological economics at their heart. And finally, I won't get into this today, but we do also explore how to integrate the values of Laudato Si into our public market portfolio. And we're in the process of thinking about how can we deepen our conviction to ESG principles in our public fund and go so far as to divest completely from fossil fuels. Although we have very few fossil fuels and oil gas exposure in our portfolio for the moment, because we do have a lot of ESG funds that are already inherently avoiding those. But I'll leave my comments at that. And I just want to say that I am more than happy to speak to anybody on this webinar today. We really couldn't have done any of this work without the help from other Catholic investors in the community that really led the way and helped us along our journey. So if anybody has questions or wants help or wants to collaborate or wants to teach us about what they're doing, we are more than happy to share anything and everything about what we've done along the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Kayoko. And just to echo that, what you said at the end, that how important it is to ask questions and to engage with others who are doing this. So on that note, if people have questions, we should have a bit of time at the end of the presentations for a Q&A. If you want to put them into the Q&A tab, we'll try and get to all the questions either in written responses or in real time. I'd now like to turn to Joseph, who is the fossil fuel campaign officer at the Laudato Si movement. Joseph has been leading the campaign to divest from fossil fuels, which, as Elizabeth said, is a first step, along with other screenings, is an important first step on the journey to aligning our faith and our finances. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Lorna. I'm going to share my screen now. Yes, maybe let's start again with the very basics of science. So this black bubble here is the resources, the fossil fuel resources that we know we could extract and we could burn in the atmosphere. But the very tiny gray bubble here is what we actually can burn if we want to have a 50% chance of remaining below 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming. So it's a very tiny fraction, which means, as the International Energy Agency said 2 years ago, it means we don't need and we should not make any new investments in new fossil fuel projects. This is an absolute necessity. And yet, there are fossil fuel companies keep on developing new fossil fuel projects. And this is a big problem. This is a big problem. Like ECOP, like Rosebank, like many new fossil fuel projects being built all over the world. And I want to stress something coming just from today, on the Pope's message for the season of creation, the future launch of season of creation. He highlighted that it is absurd to permit the continued exploration and expansion of fossil fuel infrastructures, which is great coming from the Pope, amazing Francis. And so why is it happening? It happens because the fossil fuel industry is able to expand because it is funded to do so, and it is funded by banks from one side, but also by investors directly. And sometimes these investors are Catholic institutions. And so it is an absolute necessity to remain in the spirit of Laudato Si, to prevent that by stopping investing in the fossil fuel industry. This is so the three reasons that you should remember about why we should divest in fossil fuel is that. So this is an absolute moral necessity that has been highlighted by the Holy See in many ways, and one of the most clear way was in 2020 in this guide called Journeying Towards Care for Our Common Home, where the Vatican sets as one of the most important things to do to evaluate divestment from the fossil fuel industry. And the second reason is that as a Catholic community, one of the things that may have the more impact, that will have the more impact on preventing the climate crisis and the climate disaster is divesting and speaking out by divesting against speaking out against the fossil fuel industry, and divesting may have a big impact on its ability to continue its expansion projects. And the third reason, which is a more financial one, is that remember these big black bubbles. So the actual value of fossil assets are tied to what we say we could extract and burn before we knew about climate change. So if we want not to burn these reserves, the bubble is going to blow, and the value of the assets are going to be the assets going to be stranded. So what we at LSM are calling upon is for Catholic investors to divest from fossil fuels, but also to switch to more renewable investment and to invest in climate solutions. And a third dimension is to share your story with us and to share your commitment with us to divest from fossil fuels, so we can use it in order to make communication about it, to include it into a broader campaign to try to prevent the fossil fuel industry to continue to expand. And why is it important that you share this commitment with us, that you share your journey with us? So here are the Jesuits from Britain that was included in the first video also. So they divested in 2020, I think, from fossil fuels, and they made this picture and other things around the divestment. And it was really interesting for them to share that, because it inspired others. It inspired other investors. It inspired the whole Catholic community to take action in order to move away from the fossil fuel economy. By speaking out or by communicating with us, it impacts the fossil fuel industry and its license to operate, because now they have a huge PR power, and we are like some kind of David versus Goliath. So we really need to speak out against them. and it also calls out to governments for political action. When you say you divest, you say you believe there's a need for change. And so altogether, communicating on top of your financial divestment is something that's going to speed up the transition away from the fossil fuel economy. So the next step for you, as I'm sure you're convinced, is to join us. And so on the Laudato Si movement website, there's a page, so divestment webpage, where you can sign the pledge and learn plenty of things about divestment, about the fossil fuel industry, and how it's going to impact positively your portfolio, and how it's going to be impactful in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for walking us through the whole process of divesting from fossil fuels. And as Elizabeth mentioned, one of the 4 guides that has been produced is focused on making the case for fossil fuel divestment, and also how you actually do that. It's a very easy step to take. And I think there's 5 years, up to 5 years from when you make your pledge to how that works out and to be fully divested from fossil fuels. So you can find more on the Laudato Si movement webpage about how to take that pledge to divest your investments. So I think we are now at the time, we all still have 15 minutes left for questions and answers. And if you've already gone on to the question and answer tab, you'll see that the panelists are already busy answering some of the questions that are coming through. But if you have other questions, we can start to answer some of those. So I'm going to go straight in. Elizabeth, there's a question here from Felicia Matola around how can our sisters in Africa get involved when most use charcoal for cooking and when they cannot invest because they're living from hand to mouth. It's the reality of the world that we're living in.
Thank you so much for lifting this up, Felicia. It's a very important question with no single or easy answer. I would sort of reflect on 2 dimensions. One important dimension is investing in clean energy solutions. So an example, of course, would be VITA, which is a Catholic, an Irish NGO that was anchored by a group of Catholic investors that came together collaboratively to help them invest in clean cook stove solutions in East Africa. So we need more examples of these types of creative solutions that bring new energy options to different parts of the world. To your point about our sisters not being able to invest, living hand to mouth, I think this speaks right to the heart of global inequities in our financial system. We have a system where wealth is concentrated in the global north. And I think part of what we're called to do as stewards of resources is reflect on those power inequities and think about how we can transition resources gradually to community governance, ownership, and control in communities around the world. And of course, this is in part 2 why I brought up this point around broad participation and decision-making, right? So how do we start to break down some of those inequities that we see in the concentration of power and wealth by embracing this logic of subsidiarity of Laudato Si? No easy answers, but I think we're starting to see some groups who are really, especially religious congregations, who are thinking creatively about different kinds of governance structures that start to help those resources flow differently. I'll invite Kayoko or Joseph if you have anything else to add there.
Yeah, I'll just add that an important point to make, if I understood your question correctly, is that we're focused on investments today. And so investments mean that you've got savings, and some organizations don't have savings, as you say. They're living hand to mouth, and they might not have the resources to excess resources to do these investments. And so I think there are many other ways that organizations who might not have savings and resources, like extra resources, can envision and help create the world that Laudato Si is calling us to create. But investments might not be the exact way to do it. You have your your sisters themselves, I'm sure they are working in the community to create a more ecological community, to recycle, to be mindful of consumption. So I think there are many other ways to bring about this vision, but investments is a very specific tool that requires some sort of extra savings.
Thanks, Kayoko. I'm just going to stick with you, Kayoko. There's a question here from Patrick, and it's really around he says, I'm afraid microcredits are no one size fits all solution. It's very true. They have worrying side effects, particularly when improperly managed. They can also impose a huge return paybacks for their beneficiaries. How do you deal with that kind of context and situation in your work? You talked about beneficial returns as one example of an organization that you're working with. How do you deal with this issue of, I guess, right returns or like just returns, or and the kind of unscrupulous players that are out there?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. And so first I'll say that's why these investments, they are difficult to make because you really have to take the time to vet and understand and diligence your partners and make sure that they have the same values, and meaning their goal is to help these populations, not to make profit off of them. Of course, everybody needs to be compensated. To do this work can sometimes be quite costly. And so oftentimes that's where a lot of the high interest rate goes to, is actually making these loans. But for example, beneficial returns, they charge, I believe, on average 6% for their loans to the companies, which in the countries that they work in, that's a very, very low interest rate. And what we really look at is how much profit are these companies making and where's that profit going? And so beneficial returns, they're really just covering their costs of having their staff deploy these loans and work with these borrowers. They're not making exorbitant profits, and they're not millionaires living in the United States. And so for us, really tracing that money and understanding who is benefiting from the entire process is really, really important. And I'll just add that there's also other industry campaigns. Smart Campaign is one of them that we really look to see if the organizations in the community are treating their customers in accordance to these certain principles and making sure they have fair pricing and they have fair contracts. So there's a lot of different ways in a diligence that you can understand whether or not you're working with a good actor or a bad. But it's a very good point, because there are many companies that are just trying to profit off the backs of poor people, and those are not the companies that we want to support.
Thanks, Kayoko. And I guess this also comes to the need to work collaboratively together.
Yeah.
Because some of that information and the accessibility of those kinds of data can be expensive. If you're a small investor, it really points to the need for building collaboration. I have another question here that's come in on text message. It says, I've started reading these resources, but haven't yet found anything easy to use, like a screening tool to look up stocks or funds. She says, for context, I'm part of a campaign asking people to move their money out of Vanguard, the #1 fossil fuel investor. And everyone is asking where to put their money instead. I think this is a massive issue, given that the divestment campaign is so successful. So is there an answer to this? She hasn't finished reading the guide yet, but is there an answer to this in the resources? So maybe Elizabeth, you know the resources back to front. Are there answers on where you put your money if you've divested?
So I think we had a little bit of conversation around this question in the chat too, and there were two resources that Kayoko and I had lifted up. One is As You Sow, and another is Your Stake. And I think the important piece here is to recognize that, especially on the public market side, there is really limited information and transparency still around the quality and the integrity of environmentally, socially sort of conscious investment options, but there are a small and growing number of tools that would allow you to sort of score your public market holdings according to certain criteria. So those are two that we put in the chat that I think are a great place to start.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Another question here for Joseph around, are there plans for another collective divestment announcement? And if so, how do people get involved in that?
I didn't understand the question that way, but there's no, we haven't planned a next divestment announcement, but it's an ongoing work. So please share whenever your community has jointly decided that they wanted to be part of it. Please share that with us, and we can think about how we use it in the most impactful way. And just to go back to the question before, there are a few fossil-free indexes. And I think fossil-free index is also one resource that could be useful, but in the US, so it depends where you are. And there's also the question of what does it really mean divesting from fossil fuels? I think it's important to have in mind that the very first thing is no new investment in fossil fuels. So you don't have to divest now, just right now, because it may be costly or not the right thing for you right now. It's just about saying, we don't believe the fossil fuel industry is an industry we want to profit in the future, or we believe it should be invested in. And so this is the basic step, which means probably divesting in the next years when it's the right time and when it's appropriate, whatever the situation you are in. But really it's about stopping investing in the fossil fuel industry, then slowly moving away from it, selling your assets and not renewing any form of financial ties you have with them, and spreading the news and speaking out loud that you don't believe in the fossil fuel industry. This is the most simple thing. You may not have savings or big money, but it's still really important that you say you don't believe in it. That's most of the impact.
Thanks, Joseph. So there's not going to be one big kind of announcement, but more if people sign up.
Maybe, but it's not planned already.
I guess once you get a critical mass, then you can make the announcement. So you're not putting a date on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, very good. There's another question here from Tara Doyle, and it says, I love the call to actions around the focus on fossil-free investing. Are there other particular environmental or social issues you're seeking opportunities to engage on alongside managers and investment coalitions? We'd love to hear what's top of mind for you. I don't know who wants to take that one.
Erika, do you want to start on that one?
Sure. If I understand the question, I think she's asking about shareholder activism in the public markets. And I would just say that because we're a small staff, we don't directly do shareholder activism with companies. We work with fund managers that are doing it on our behalf. So I personally don't have any specific issues that we are advocating for at the moment. Sorry, that's not a very good answer.
That's fine. I'll move on if that's okay, because there's a rush of last minute questions coming in. So there's one from Claudia Histy, who says, what type of grassroots movement would you recommend to a parishioner whose diocese bishop signed off on the Laudato Si encyclical, other than personal investing? How do we even start the conversation when the highest Catholic office in your community quietly is maybe not so in favour of this? So I guess what they're asking is around how do you start to influence within your community, and who should you kind of partner with to bring about that shift in thinking around investments? Maybe Joseph, that's one for you.
You should definitely join the Laudato Si movement. You can do the Laudato Si animation training, where you're going to get, you're going to meet other Catholics across the globe that may face the same kind of challenge you face, and we have resources to provide you on how to start the conversation in your parish. And if you're motivated, I also have some resources for you on how to try to speak to the finance manager of your diocese, and eventually to get your diocese to consider divestment from fossil fuel, which is, it's not an easy step if your bishop is not even started in his journey.
Hey, Lorna, could I say something on that
Absolutely.
as well? In the Laudato Si Action platform, we have a number of dioceses, close to 200 already signed up for the platform and are engaged. And I would just start with this: begin a dialogue. It may take a few years to move the bishop in any particular direction, but show an earnest interest. Continue to work in your diocese on particular projects. Encourage a group to form that may try to meet with your bishop. This takes some time for some people to accept this, but I think also showing examples of other dioceses and what they're doing positively can have an impact. It may take a little while, but that's what the platform does. It's trying to lift up examples of action that are positive that we can use to help support this kind of movement. So don't give up. Look for other good examples. A lot of them are financially reasonable things to do that save money and also help. So just wanted to encourage also the platform, the use of the platform.
Absolutely, John. And I think the resources are, the resource on divestment for dioceses will be very useful in that regard. All the tips that are in there, and also connecting obviously with the Laudato Si movement. There's one final question here, again on divestment. It's, do you have good examples of moving universities from investments in fossil fuels to divestment? I'd like a step-by-step, like to take it step by step. We have 8 to 9 Catholic colleges in Philadelphia, and none are divested at this time. So are there examples of universities? Joseph, could you put Tom in touch with some of those universities after this?
Yes, absolutely. Please contact me and let's discuss that further. But there are, I think, 7 Catholic universities and colleges in the US that fully divested from fossil fuels in the last 7-8 years, and so it is feasible.
So thank you to all our panelists, and thank you to all of you for coming today and participating in this webinar. We will, of course, the most important thing is to go and look up the resources. The QR codes are there on the screen and the addresses. We will send you an email if you left your email address with the recording of today and with all the links in that email. So have a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon at another Laudato Si Week event, perhaps. And if not, we look forward to seeing you on another webinar or meeting around ecological economics and the Laudato Si platform. Bye.